witnessed a significant moment, quite golden if you ask me, where the governor went on a rally, was literally walking from street to street, area to area, community to community, and having a one-on-one interface with the people, and that is something that Benue has never witnessed before. And I make bold to say it's very rare even in Nigeria. Benue is truly blessed this time around.
Of course, somebody told me yesterday that this is the first time. Yesterday was the first time she was coming close to the governor, because the governor walked on her street, and they were able to move closely to the governor. You see, what this does is that it endears you to the people, then it makes you to be trustworthy. People trust leaders when the leader comes down to their level. So it has nothing to do with having some chips on your shoulders and you're up there and everybody is down here. But once in a while you try to mingle with the people, you understand how they feel you. By the time you live within the environment, you know what they're feeling.
Yeah.
So it's very important that, in fact, that was actually commendable.
And it brings this sense of inclusivity and makes people feel they are part and parcel of the government, and government is truly not far away from them.
Yes.
And they are all one. Everybody is a stakeholder, right? Everybody is involved, and all hands have to be on deck, for a progressive government. That way one can easily come out and then see littered environment far away from his or her residence, and will still want to pick it up, because the person will feel Benue belongs to the person. Benue, the system cares about the person, so the person will care for the system.
Of ownership.
Yeah.
When you have the sense of ownership for an organization, your street, your compound, that you are not the landlord, and other things, government property, you begin to have the sense you have towards your personal stuff. That is the sense you have towards government property. So when this vandalism or vandalization we see around, if you begin to have that kind of sense, they won't happen. It's patriotism in action. So for me, what it means is that by the time you say you're a citizen of Nigeria, you're a citizen or an indigenous of a state, everything that belongs to Nigeria belongs to you. Even the people, the Nigerians, and even foreigners are living in Nigeria are your people. So the sense of he is not my tribe, he is not my clique, he's not from my clan shouldn't exist. Because everything in Nigeria belongs to you. So even the people in Nigeria are yours, just like you are theirs. So by the time we're going to have this sense of ownership, this protective flair for government property, I think we'll fare better, and government will spend less.
All right, and moving away from the jubilation that happened right here in Benue State, that the people had one-on-one interface with the governor of Benue State, feeling like they are part and parcel, of the government. Another incident happened where Labour disowned agreements and federal government threatened mass sack.
Yeah, I saw that.
I bet many didn't see that coming. It brought memories of when medical doctors went on strike, and they were threatened this way.
Yeah,
well,
I think in Lagos, I think it happened in Lagos. There was a sack threat.
Yeah, the federal government, that was on Wednesday, admonished organized labor to consider the broader economic implication of its push for an unrealistic higher national minimum wage. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, handed down the admonition, hinted that 250,000 naira minimum wage demanded by labor could undermine the economy and lead to mass retrenchment of workers and jeopardize the welfare of Nigerians. However, the labor unions refuted President Bola Tinubu's claim during his Democracy Day broadcast on Wednesday that an agreement had been reached on the new minimum wage.
Did you see the choice of word unrealistic?
Yes,
What makes it unrealistic?
250,000 naira, and their allegations started to cripple the economy, going by the number of workers that Nigerians have, across a board.
Okay, how many workers do we have in Nigeria? I think we need to start looking for statistics.
Yeah.
How many civil servants we have in Benue State, and how many civil servants we have in all
And
the 36
of course,
states?
if they are going to
And
go
of
with
course,
250,000 naira, there will definitely have to be cuts at the upper level, and probably that's
Yes.
what many do not want to have that conversation where they're beginning to
That
say, can
is the
the
point.
allowances of the rep members, the senators, or even that of the presidency be slashed down? Can the number of
Okay, now,
aides
thank you very
presidency
much.
have,
You took that out of-
media
of-
aid
out of my-
has,
out of my
can it
sale.
be slashed down?
The aids and every other thing, the materials at their disposal. How many cars does a governor have? You understand? So we should begin to talk about cutting down costs so that the people can pursue their happiness.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Well,
I kept saying that maybe we are in a place where our political managers are constantly against the financial freedom of its citizens. No, seriously. But meanwhile, I want us to shift a little. About from this, away from this. Yesterday, when the president Bola Tinubu was trying to climb the vehicle that he used in monitoring the parade, he slipped, and I saw a lot of posts online. And I'm using this medium to tell Nigerians that the president is a human being.
yeah.
So, in fact, what happened yesterday made him more of a human being than what you think he has been. So, it's not something that we should make
Laugh,
a mockery of.
Exactly.
Understand? Because
I mean,
one is elderly.
Biden had staggered.
Even Obama
Mm-hmm.
fell. No, Biden actually fell. Even Obama fell too. They are human beings. So it's not because you are the president doesn't mean okay. It's like saying you are president, so you can't go to toilet. You understand? So he is a human being, and he will remain a human being until he departs from. So anything that happens to the ordinary Nigerian can happen to him.
Yes, and moving away from that conversation, we are going to be focusing on 25 years of uninterrupted democracy here in Nigeria, and we'll have our guests for a conversation shortly. Remember, you can be part of Daybreak Benue this morning via our social media platform. Drop your comments, your questions, your experiences of June 12, 2024, and we'll definitely love to hear from your experiences as well. Please stay with us.
Benue Fashion Show Season 3 is here.
It's that time of the year for fashion designers, entrepreneurs, and fashion enthusiasts to shine.
This year, sale of forms for the competition begins from 15th April to 30th June 2024.
Pick a form at Benue Television, located at Special Duties Wing, Government House, Makudi. Form costs 5,000 naira only.
Stage 1 screening begins on the 6th of July 2024. Great prizes await you.
The first prize, 1 million naira. Second prize, 500,000 naira. And third prize, 300,000 naira. All prizes are inclusive of cash and fashion tools. Also, consolation prizes and gift items.
For sponsorship, partnership, and inquiries, please call Benue TV Marketing on 0906 188 9838 or 0703 794 5569. Benue Fashion Show, embracing fusion fashion.
Welcome back from the Adult break. You're still watching Daybreak Benue, and we're going to be having a conversation on 25 years of uninterrupted democracy here in Nigeria. One would say Nigeria is still a youth as far as democracy is concerned. But 25 years of uninterrupted democracy, and so far so good. How has the journey been like? And the labor of our heroes past, is it in vain or it's not in vain? Is Nigeria on the right track? What's the hope like? Or what does the future holds for Nigeria? Does it look like democracy will someday be given way to anytime soon? All of this and many more are the questions I'll be pressing on to find out more from our guest who is already seated for a conversation. And joining us in the studio live is Dr. Ben Ugo. He is public intellectual and social justice advocate. You're most welcome to Daybreak Benue.
Thank you very much, my sister. Thank
Welcome.
you, my brother.
And happy Democracy Day to you.
Same here, please.
Okay, how does it feel that Nigeria has so far have this 25 years of uninterrupted democracy?
Well, to Nigeria and Nigerians, it is a milestone attainment. Democracy has had a very rough trajectory since independence. The first journey, which was under a parliamentary system, was aborted midway by an abrupt military intervention. And subsequently, the military kept on intervening in the polity of the nation for a very, very lengthy period. And a second attempt was when they invented the presidential system of government for the Second Republic. That too was abruptly terminated after 4 years. Subsequent attempts were transitions that veered into transmutations, sometimes military leaders attempting to gain legitimacy through the back door and becoming civilian presidents. So that was the experience that Nigeria went through. So it has been a very rough trajectory. And for the return to civil rule in 1999, it is very significant because it signaled the return of the military back to their professional calling. So to Nigerians, I would say congratulations to all of us. It has been a very, very enduring battle over the soul of the country on the basis of authoritative control and values allocation between the civil class and the military. It has been a tussle battling over the soul of the nation. So the military were reluctant to relinquish power. So for having the restoration of civil rule in 1999 is quite significant because it is a final restoration of sovereignty to the people. So I must say that that is commendable. Then secondly, the return to civil rule in Nigeria in 1999 was quite significant. Prior to that period, occasioned by enduring military rule, Nigeria was almost becoming a pariah state. So today, she has restored her place in the Committee of States. Internationally, she has regained her respect. And you can see that as a reflection of the international recognition that our leaders have had all this while. And there were tremendous gains, reputable gains in terms of even the gains that the country got economically. Most significantly, the issue of debt cancellation. There were huge moments of opportunities because Nigeria's democracy was restored. And today, I think we have every reason to celebrate. So I think it is a victory for Nigerians.
Okay, saying we have every reason to celebrate means that you're not under the school of thought that holds that Nigeria would have been better off still remaining under military rule because civilian rule so far so good hasn't really brought the promise, or it's not worth, the labor of our heroes past.
No, I don't agree with that. First and foremost, what is the philosophy behind military rule? The military rule is an aberration. It has nobody's legitimacy. Democracy is globally acknowledged as the rule of the people by the people, and in accordance with and in compliance with the dictates of the Constitution. The military don't rule with constitutions. That is number one. So whatever, no matter how benevolent they may claim to be, they have no legitimacy to rule. And there is a huge deficit when governance is not about a specific mandate from the people. It loses the legitimacy that is required to govern. So the military has no business. As an institution, they are not even trained to govern. Their professional calling and training should be restricted to managing the internal security framework of the country. and then defending the country against any external aggression. So I disagree completely. Democracy is about galvanizing popular support. It can be very challenging because you are dealing with a heterogeneous interest groups. But on the basis of, like, Nigeria is a multi-racial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious country, like so many other democracies all over the world. And you have the challenges of moderating the diverse opinions, and then try to aggregate them to factor into policy. So managing democracy can be very, very challenging, but I don't think any military government is an alternative to any civil rule in our civilization.
Before the military came, all the disruptions they've caused in our democracy, they'll give you this excuse that the administration they are trying to oust was corrupt and all that. Now the question has been, since we've attained this level of democracy, at least for 25 years, do you envisage the entry of the military? Because are we really doing what democracy stipulates right now in these 25 years?
Yes, we are evolving. An evolution trend takes different shapes and stages of actualization. I disagree completely that the military were invited on account that governance or the civilian governors were corrupt. The motives would have perhaps been different, because the military as an institution upholds accountability. So they are not answerable to anybody. They don't even rule with the constitution. So what makes them a better people to conceive even the democracy we are? These are the defects, historical and contradicting defects in the system. Yes, the military chose themselves to remain in power and dictate the pace of even constitutional frameworks. The successive Nigerian constitutions we have had are always at the instance of the military governments. They pretended to be a transition government, conceiving ideology for politicians. That is not tenable. These are issues that have led the country into a lot of complex situations. Like at the other time, Babangida brought Daiki, and he was pretending that he conceptualized democracy in the best fashion. He even went ahead and inaugurated a democratically elected National Assembly against the dictates of the Constitution. So it was Daiki. And he was busy telling Nigerians that yes, he was conceptualizing the best form of democracy, and the experiment failed eventually because the whole idea of the concept contradicted with the motives. He was not very sincere. His Maradonic style led to where the whole transition ended. And we had another full dosage of another dramatic transition by his successor Abacha. So it has been a very rough trajectory. You see, politicians or civil rule is about making mistakes and making corrections. It is an evolving trend, and because you can understand that the most challenging aspect of an evolution in every developing nation is the steady growth in population. Nigeria has always been advancing in population. So the challenge is that what do we do of this population? Is it a useful population? Is it viable? Have people been trained to manage their livelihood and contribute to the national economy? These are some of the questions. You have a group of people, some of them call themselves civil servants. Are they really contributing to the economy? What are they producing? There is an innocuous class that calls itself the political class. Are they really contributing to the economy? These are some of the questions. Under a democracy, we must make interrogations. We must ask questions. But then, asking questions does not mean we should run down the system, we should sabotage. When we ask questions, we provide answers. Why is the system not working? Is it because Nigeria has duplicated functions in a bicameral legislature? We should begin to make interrogations like that. If you talk about bogus structure of governance, you want to cut down the cost of governance, you shouldn't start at the level of parastatals and ministry. Take a critical look at the institution of the National Assembly. What is Nigeria doing with a bicameral legislature? When you have House of Reps duplicating the same functions that the Senate performs. Yes, because the same committees that are resident in the House of Reps are also in the Senate. And they work under the passage of one appropriation, a common appropriation. So Nigeria has had the benefit of enjoying prosperity because we have inherent viability in our domestic prosperity, which has been exploited by the ruling class, either military or civil. But the truth of the matter is that the military led us into a lot of crises. They even conceived the type of democracy that we are practicing. They delivered onto us a very weak political culture, militarized, full of impunity, lawlessness, disregard for authority, disrespect. So all these are derived from a conceptualized military culture of introducing politics.
There are some countries within the developing nations, Mexico, Paraguay, Thailand, they got their democracies around the time Nigeria entered. That was 1999. Others were 1997, like that. If you compare Nigeria with these countries, how have they fared in terms of growth and development in democracy? How will you assess these countries that I've mentioned, especially if you have one or two things about them? They all got these democracies around 1999.
Nigeria has been, you see, the cumulative setbacks, like I earlier on said, you would have said Nigeria got independence with those countries at the same time. But Nigeria's democracy has suffered cumulative setbacks because of intermittent military interventions, like I said earlier. Now, making comparisons between one country and another in terms of economic development is essentially a different arm. Nigeria has had a lot
but
of
it's important.
It's very important, but Nigeria has had a lot of problems. Some of the problems are related to policy somersault, policy reversals. There has been no consistent policy in consolidating the framework of governance. Each government comes in, it is a break and rebuild approach, because like when Obasanjo, I'm just giving an illustration, when Obasanjo approached the Bretton Woods institutions and finally got some debt cancellation, it was a huge relief to Nigeria. But today, look at where we have gone back. We are one of the most indebted nations in the whole world. And that's not a positive ratio for growth and development. A country that is indebted beyond her capacity for repaying, that is a disaster. So you can't compare Nigeria with some of these countries. Some of these countries have a properly sanitized system that runs on transparency, like Paraguay that you said, and you said Mexico, yes, because they have a firmly established problem that is run through a transparent system of government. You can hardly find that in Nigeria, because there is an entrenched culture, one, of mediocrity, because politicians have, in their own wisdom, weaponized mediocrity as the yardstick for patronage allocation. And no modernizing nation does that. Every modernizing nation, or any modernized nation, patronizes her excellence, patronizes her knowledge resources. It is in Nigeria that the most available alternative to excellence is mediocrity, people who can do dirty jobs. So it is the way our leaders have managed the country. If not, the viability of Nigeria, the domestic viability of Nigeria is comparable to none of the developing nations. We have huge reservoir of resources in solid minerals and even in manpower. The crisis that Nigeria has always had is the crisis of monopolizing the source of revenue, which has been a protracted crisis for the economy itself. Nigeria, with a rapidly growing population, require a huge perfection of economic diversification. That is creating additional revenue points, because the population is rapidly growing. We used to say we were 180. Today we are speculating 220. And we are anticipating that even with the growth rate, comparable even to the motor rate, we are advancing to get to 250. So when you have this kind of rapid growth in population, the government is challenged to be very constantly assessing the planning stages. Planning programs in Nigeria hardly manifest. You can hardly have any serious planning period. The planning process that maybe President Buhari initiated some few years ago has been abandoned by the Buhari government.
Okay, why is that so?
I told you that it's about idiosyncrasy of leaders beyond systemic establishment. Succession should be a systemic. It shouldn't be on the basis of individual idiosyncrasy of leaders. But that's what you find in Nigeria, even under one political party, the same political party. A successor demobilizes all that his predecessor did. Maybe sometimes to get cheap credit, and sometimes with the anxieties to start afresh and satisfy some very cosmetic expectations.
Okay.
Nigeria has been way laid back because of these problems. Leaders come instead of consolidating. Like the APC has been in power since 2015 when General Buhari came, and the current president was then crowned the national leader of the party. One would expect that as he came into power, he should also improve on the legacies that Buhari left. But all you see is policy somersault here and there, and passing blames and passing the buck or blame game and whatever. So there is a problem in the ideology of the ruling class. The fact that they believe that governance is personal, and governance should be very institutional. Our leaders personalize governance. They make it their own idiosyncratic drive at a personal level. And sometimes the establishment suffers, because the issue of breaking and rebuilding is very expensive and very costly. So that has been the architecture that has driven Nigeria to this point politically.
During former President Buhari's regime, Nigeria witnessed a very dynamic shift away from May 29th to June 12th, now being celebrated as democracy. That many people saw that shift as finally Nigeria starting to get it right with democracy, and there's a lot of hope by that very pronouncement alone. Now it's 2024 and Nigerians have again celebrated Democracy Day. Do you see the true representation of Democracy Day, even when it's now being celebrated on June 12th?
Well, June 12th as a date remains significant in the annals of Nigeria's history. But making it Democracy Day was not what I really anticipated. Because one, it was an annulled election. This is my argument. So it was inconclusive as far as the dictates of that time ascertained. There was no declaration of the victory. The elections only reflected the wishes and aspirations of Nigeria in terms of the voting strength, the voting exercise. I was an adult and an active member of the SDP at that time. I was even a national delegate that voted for President Abiola. And when President Abiola did came here, myself, the immediate past governor of Benue State,
already?
When the presidential aspirant, presidential candidate of the SDP came here, myself and the former governor and a few others, Senator worked with the late and Abuke Shura, we accompanied him round to take a tour of Benue belatedly, because the arrangement was that he will come here earlier and do that. But because there were some in-party hostilities between the governor then and the party headers, so we took Abiola to Boko and to Otukpo to see the traditional leadership in Benue. We even went to Awaji to see Adasu. We worked for June 12th for the realization of Abiola's victory. Unfortunately, that victory was not legitimized. It was not declared. The president annulled the election midway into the collection. So we create certain things that don't happen in Nigeria. Like sometimes when you say somebody removed subsidy, or like when they said President Tinubu removed subsidy, there was no subsidy in the budget. We have to be sincere with ourselves. Sometimes we create narratives that don't exist. And it became an issue. Today we are suffering the fate of that. That item was not included in the budget. We read the budget. The budget is a public document. Nobody should deceive anybody. So Abiola was not declared president. I stand on what I'm saying, and I mean it. Midway into the collation of the election, the results, the military class met, and there was tension all over the country. We were all anxious for the outcome of the election, suspecting that our candidate will have a win. But unfortunately, the results were not announced. The few states that were released, yes, Abiola was maintaining a lead. That is not to say that he won conclusively, because he was not declared a winner. So I'm not saying that government hardly makes a mistake. But in my own wisdom, that is precisely what I'm saying, that the decision to make June 12th Democracy Day did not go down well with me. Because it was not actualized. The election on that day was not actualized. So
are you of the school of thought that believe that June 12th has been designated as a date for our democracy just to pacify a section of the country?
It is part of the organized confusion. Because the same government that terminated the political structures of June 12th, I think the immediate past President Buhari was very critical in the Abacha's government. Yes. So it's like trying to wake up a dead person from the mortuary, which is very, very impossible. So much harm was done to Abiola, who personified the June 12 struggles, even at the level of his personal safety. Yes, I and a few others were on the corridors of power serving certain interests. I worked very closely with the current president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He was then a senator. And we were in the trenches together. Even when the whole system caught on fire, I was there. During the PDM, I was the first administrative secretary of the People's Democratic Movement of Nigeria. Yes. And during the 1994 Constitutional Conference, we worked very closely with the late General Yar'Adua. I was at a point his age before he was arrested and thrown into jail and finally exterminated. So you see that Nigerians don't know that so much has passed under the bridge. And we are still, today, Tinubu, who is president of Nigeria, is the biggest beneficiary of June 12 struggles. Yes, he was supposed to be, he was part of the struggle. He was part of the the Nadeco group. We all went to Lagos during the formalization of Nadeco. He played a very key role. He played certain key roles, even in bringing Abiola originally. He was there with Senator Wande Bimbola and Mateskwe and the rest. And I was in the corridors as a young man, learning under the tutelage of some very responsible leaders. Some of them are even late now. I don't want to be dropping names here, but I've gone around and saying that most of what we see today is a design drama by a clique. We have had the misfortune of being misled by an irresponsible and selfish elite. The political elite in this country are terribly selfish. We are suffering the consequences of having a terrible, selfish elite in charge of the affairs of this country. That is the much I can say now.
And today we are celebrating uninterrupted democracy day, 25 years of uninterrupted democracy. And in the midst of the celebration, workers have been threatened with sack if labor insists mass strike, let me emphasize on the mass strike, if labor insists on their unproposed minimum wage of 250,000 naira against what the federal government is saying should be the realistic figure here, a figure that many can categorically even point hand at saying this is what they're actually coming up with. This is 60,000 to 70,000 naira, not even close to the 100,000 naira that labor are. So, are Nigerians really enjoying a government of the people for the people?
No, there is no evidence to say that. And it stems from the weak political culture and consciousness that we have as a people. Labor movements the world over influence policy changes and decisions. In this country, the negotiation of labor has been very narrow scoped. It is when their welfare is brought into play that they begin to shout. Nothing is working in this country. We expected revolutionary pressures, especially from labor movements, beyond your asking for stipends, payments. Because what they're asking even now can hardly take anybody home with a responsible family. Because the depression of the economy, the devaluation of the currency, and the declining value of exchange rate, the naira exchange rate, are things that are on a very steady growth, a steady increase every day. So we should be asking questions. Why is the local government system in Nigeria not working? Are Labour asking certain questions? Why are they not talking about judicial and electoral reforms to consolidate democracy? Because Nigeria's democracy has come under threat because of electoral fraud. Right from independence. Labour should be very holistic. Are you getting what I'm saying? Not just asking for better welfare packages. They should interrogate the system. Because right now, Nigeria's system is under siege. You have an entire local government system that is not working and nobody is talking about it. A whole arm of government where development is supposed to take place. The local government system is the grassroots mechanization. And you must, development at every given step must originate from the local government. Why are they not asking certain questions? Why are they not protesting against it? So the issue of minimum wage, yes, it is a contentious issue. But when they make comparisons that we are supposed to take home this while lawmakers are taking, it doesn't make any sense at all. These comparisons are unnecessary. They should have a very holistic approach. Why are those systems not working? Even the local government systems are pupilled by workers, aren't they? So they should ask fundamental questions. Why are our health systems not standardized to attract even health tourism? We are supposed to be a great nation in the Committee of Nations. We are the giant of Africa. We should be very critical in the emerging globalization. Why are things not working? Labour should be asking those questions because Labour itself should be a legitimate arm of government. You understand? There should be an arm of government trying to put the wrongs right. They should be asking questions. They should be interrogating. They should keep government on its toes in the dispensation of justice and the allocation of values. So sometimes you see Labour go on strike at the lowest moment when they know that everything has degenerated to a very bad level. But the Labour themselves and their leaders know that this country is not working. Holistically, they should take a bolder step to make things work by saying that, look, this is not how it is supposed to be. Going to National Assembly to protest, it's not just rolling out drums and calling out workers to go on strike. Organized labor should articulate a framework of even dissenting views and approach government so that they can make a lot difference. I think I'm making some sense. Instead of periodically rising to the occasion that, okay, because there are the cost of rising, the cost of materials, the price is rising in the market square and we want to get things right. That's not their approach. That is a fire brigade approach. They should look at a holistic picture. Where is Nigeria heading to? Why is the legislature not performing the roles they're supposed to perform? Why is the local government system not working? Very, very fundamental. So there are some of these defects here and there that I expect Labour to take up more than the issue of, because beneath the issues that they are trying to raise, holistically, when you address some of the fundamental issues, the issues of welfare and their own take-home package, will be taken care of.
Okay, democracy is supposed to encourage unity, cohesion, and other dividends we're supposed to reap from democracy. In these 25 years, do you think it has helped Nigeria to unite and to cohere for this past 25 years? Has it done more or it has done worse?
Okay, and then Dr. Ben, before you respond to that, we're due for a break. When we return, we'll get your response to that very question. Keep watching Daybreak Benue, where we're having a conversation on the 25 years of uninterrupted democracy here in Nigeria. We'll be back shortly. Please stay with us.
Benue Fashion Show Season 3 is here.
It's that time of the year for fashion designers, entrepreneurs, and fashion enthusiasts to shine.
This year, sale of forms for the competition begins from 15th April to 30th June 2024.
Pick a form at Benue Television, located at Special Duties Wing, Government House, Makudi. Form cost 5,000 naira only.
Stage 1 screening begins on the 6th of July 2024. Great prizes await you.
The first prize, 1 million naira. Second prize, 500,000 naira. And third prize, 300,000 naira. All prizes are inclusive of cash and fashion tools. Also, consolation prizes and gift items.
For sponsorship, partnership and inquiries, please call Benue TV Marketing on 0906 188 9838 or 0703 794 5569.
Benue Fashion Show,
embracing fusion fashion.
This year's Democracy Day celebration in Benue State has taken a different dimension, witnessing a crowd that has not been seen in recent years. The event precedes a democracy march led by the governor of the state, Reverend Father Nathaniel, from Government House Gate to IBB Square, venue for the celebration in Makudi, the state capital. This event, according to the governor, is an opportunity to celebrate liberty and freedom, where the masses are drivers of democracy. He says in the past 25 years, Nigeria has experienced uninterrupted democracy, a feat he opines is worth celebrating.
As we mark democracy celebration, I hereby restate my commitment towards rewriting the socio-economic narrative of our dear Benue State. I am forever committed to building formidable systems and institutions premised on fairness, accountability, democratic ethos, equity, and justice.
Governor Alia uses the celebration to mention some of his achievements in the last 1 year, which he says has engendered economic growth through reforms in all sectors of the economy. He says his government has embarked on people-oriented projects through his administration's 7-point agenda in line with the current economic realities. The state chief executive announces that over 400 kilometer statewide roads will be declared and contracted for construction in a matter of days, even as the administration begins demarcation in Benue communities to solve issues of land disputes. He reveals that his government has achieved these milestones without borrowing.
Although this task has been challenging, the impact so far has been very encouraging. For instance, we have nipped in the bud almost all the inter-ethnic community skirmishes they were prevalent before and after we came into office.
According to the governor, his administration has concluded a legal framework to establish a civil security outfit to protect the state, with particular consideration for reviving moribund state companies to create more jobs for the youth while increasing internally generated revenue.
As a government of popular consent, the government of the masses, I am mindful of the honor and trust bestowed on me. For this, I have pushed sleep and comfort to the back seat to ensure that I live up to the expectations and terms of our social contract.
A minute's silence was observed in honor of a former military governor of Benue State, Group Captain Joshua Obedemi, who died this year at the age of 73 years. Emmanuel Akula, Benue Television News, Makudi.
Welcome back from that break. We're still having a conversation here with Dr. Bem on the 25 years of uninterrupted democracy. And just before that break, Steve posed the questions to you that
maybe I'll rephrase again. Has democracy impacted cohesion and unity around or across all the ethnic and religious groups we have in Nigeria these 25 years?
Yes, to a large extent it has. Because when you look at the history, the revolutionary history of the country, the biggest challenge has always been that of building a cohesive unity on the strength of national integration. Because like I said before, Nigeria is a multi-plural nation with cleavages on the ethnicity, religion, and sections. And because the issue of ethnic diversities, managing it has always been a very heavy contention since independence. Leaders have had to contend with managing the diversities that accrue daily on the basis of multiracial, multilinguistic, multi-ethnic groups. Fundamentally, there was a challenge. The pre-independence agitations were piloted on the tripartite structures of the Yoruba, the Hausa, and the Igbos as the major tribes in Nigeria. That trend followed up after independence. And Nigeria has over 300 ethnic groups identified. Some of the small tribes are even lost.
Yeah.
But you can still secure most of them. They have not been patronized because there is a dominant structure that presides over this country since the days of the pre-independence era up to the independence era. And up to now, in contemporary Nigeria, that psychology of ethnic domination of the three groups is still very, very prevalent. And that has led to a lot of revolutionary prejudice amongst the ethnic groups. Some of the so-called minority groups in the country, are they really minority when they have a size of, like the T people have a size for their population size can contain over 4 or 5 states? And because of political considerations, they've not found any additional state. They are even sharing Benue with other ethnic groups. And their kith and kins in other states are also subjected to extent marginalization in terms of even getting into the mainstream of governance, in terms of integrating them. So the challenge for integrating smaller groups in Nigeria has always been the problem with forging a united nation. But I think democracy since 1999 has tried to do a bit of some of these things. But the prejudice will always be there in terms of striking bargains. Some of these prejudice and even secessional attempts are just mere ways of trying to advance agitations
Yeah.
for inclusion. So, by and large, I think the greatest achievement of democracy is the fact that since 1999, amidst a lot of hostilities, we've been able to manage and forge together a united nation against all odds.
Okay, now you said manage hostilities. Are we supposed to be managing them, or we are supposed to eradicate them?
No, we cannot eradicate them.
At least to the barest minimum.
You see, the issues that relate to some of the risings, uprisings, and revolutionary pressures on the system have to do with allocation of resources.
Yes.
Some people are laying claims to derivation, that the oil in this country belongs to them, and indignantly they are also trying to regionalize a supposedly national resource. So these things, they are very challenging, and you bring in the issue of inequitable distribution or even the resources that are accrued from consolidated oil revenues. That is also another challenge. So unless we diversify, the whole idea about restructuring is, part of it is diversifying the economy. Let the states reclaim their viability.
Yeah.
Let them articulate their viability. A state like Benue has domestic viabilities that are still very, very untapped in the area of agriculture and solid minerals. If they do that and the revenue systems start consolidating domestic inputs, then you will have a lesser burden traveling to Abuja to get something. Because the allocation economy in this country has created most of the problems we are talking about. The inappropriate sharing formula itself is a burden to some of the states. Benue, a state like Akwa Ibom gets money from the allocation economy that is equal to all the states in the North Central put together. But if you look at the indices of budgeting in terms of the population, the land mass, the geographical features and everything, Benue is ahead of Akwa Ibom. But because of the advantage of derivation in the oil sector, which is a monopolized source of revenue, they get monies that are 10 times ahead. And that is why you will begin to discover that we live in a state where in a country where some states can be categorized as second category or second class states, so to speak. States in the river areas, particularly the oil producing areas, have created a lot of problems in the smooth economic development process of the country in terms of bargaining for more in a supposed national resource. That is why the clarion call for diversification, diversificating the economy becomes very, very important.
Yeah.
Every other state should diversify her revenues sources, from agriculture, from solid minerals, from real estate, and whatever type of investment that can make a wonderful turnover for the system.
Yeah, but don't you think if oil, of course we are digressing a little, oil states, oil producing states, if they are demanding for more, because more derivation, don't you think it's fair, considering the fact that these minerals are doing a lot of damage to the environment and is a long-term experience? Even generations yet unborn are going to experience this degradation.
It's relative. You cannot overexploit a system and expect the system to survive. The oil exploring companies are multinational companies, and they take very good care of those communities. They should go and ask their leaders. We had, and we still have, Benue Cement here. How much has it done for the host community? You can't see a case where people will go to raise it down or sabotage it because it's not making returns to the community. Because when the federal government came, they sold their shares. The state couldn't manage theirs. And the federal government sold theirs. And we sold ours to successive governors. It's a case for another day. But we have viable limestone deposition across the 3 senatorial districts, awaiting exploration. I believe the current governor will be working towards reviving the one in Batia, which Reverend Father Adasu started. The feasibility studies are all there. we pretend a lot in this country. The fact that there is oil spillage does not mean that there are environmental hazards attached to every exploration of solid mineral anywhere in the country, but that does not give you an excuse to sabotage the national infrastructure because it is sited in your village, or the endowment was situated in your village. It's even a divine providence. So the people in the south have become so arrogant. Let me use that word. And they have destabilized the economic flow of this country because of the monopoly the country has resided in oil production and oil sales. But I want to say that even beyond that, the oil theft that goes on there, the vandalization of pipes, is a major economic sabotage. Those pipes are national infrastructure for economic development. And because it's started in your place, or because you have not been treated fairly, you go and vandalize it. And you know that that is where the country is making its choice. I mean, that is sabotage, and it is a very unpatriotic act that should be condemned always. But by and large, every state should go back to the drawing board. In the 21st century, no allocation economy will survive. The rapid growth in population, the diverse population that Nigeria is augmenting daily, cannot survive on an allocation economy. Every segment of the country, the federation units, even the local governments, should be allowed to create their means. They should create their domestic means, because all resources are derivable from land. So they should create their means by excavating the earth, seeking for alternatives, rather than waiting for a very centralized, monopolized system of allocation. Every month we are waiting for allocation from the federal government, and the federal government mobilizes this allocation from the local governments. You understand?
Yes.
And centralized it, and then at the end of the day they dispatch it in that order. All this monies the federal government will houses comes from the local governments. So the local government, the federal government should be finding a way of devolving these powers. Let these powers be channeled to the appropriate zones for dissemination, and they should also deploy resources where relevant, so that projections and industries will be built, will be carried out appropriately where they are desirable.
Okay, Dr. Let me get your opinion concerning the 35 lawmakers, concerning this bill where 35 lawmakers actually are seeking rotational presidency, single tenure of 6 years.
Well, that has been a age-long agitations. Actually, it was the late Governor Aperaku, the first executive governor of Benue State, that kick-started that agitation. In his famous address, historic address at the famous ABU's area, where he advocated that the presidency should rotate to give an inclusive participation for all the federating units and even the major and minor groups in the country. He said if you tie the presidency between the north and south, you will be depriving a whole lot of other meaningful Nigerians. So he made the argument, and even pointing to the fact that there are bound very resourceful people in every part of the country. So I think that agitation gave him a lot of challenges for his re-election. He profiled MPN governors among the minorities, amongst them the late Mefodekiro of Rivers State, late Clement Song of Cross River State, and the rest. And I think there was somebody in the old Bende State, Ambrose Ali, and they factored in this issue of rotational presidency, much to the discomfort of the MPN. The ruling oligarchy at that time vehemently opposed them, and they almost cost them their elections. They got re-elected at a great price. Somewhere along the line, the military struck some 4 months later after they were elected, and that brought stop the agitations. Subsequently, the late General Abacha, during his constitutional conference, replayed the sentiments for a rotational presidency as was contained in the memorandum from some of the committee members. But the issue was discussed and left to be implemented before his tragic death and the final termination of his transition itself. Now that there are resurrections for such a policy to be enacted, I think it should be a legislation. If it goes through the legislature and it becomes a law that the presidency should rotate, I think that can also consolidate and galvanize the unity of the country better. Because most of the problems we have in this country are because power is located and restricted to the only the three major tribes. We're only pretending. Since 1999, you knew how President Jonathan became president. It was an accidental discharge. But the North and the South reduces its strength. In fact, to a large extent, it's between the Yorubas and the Hausas. Because the Igbos are also almost ostracized from the mainstream. Like you see them complaining, they have a genuine case. Since independence, after the ceremonial leadership of President Zik under a parliamentary system, since they returned to civil rule, even the vice presidency, I think, is only ones that the Igbos have had the opportunity under the Shagari presidency.
Yes. What's his name again? Well, you're right.
I'm right. Alex Kweme.
Yes.
So if you look at the ratio of representation, the Igbos are very populated. I believe they are among the most populated group in this country. They are found everywhere, in every part of the country, in active socio-economic and political legitimate activities. The Igbos are very, very conscious. Unfortunately, leadership has always eluded them. And maybe on account of their quick to secession attempts, or maybe that is a causative factor. The fact that they've not been factored into leadership positions makes them feel alienated and sometimes make them feel ostracized to the point that they want to go on their own. But I want to say that if the rotational presidency issue finally gets a legislative nod, this country will be better. This democracy will be better. If we are to manage the composition that is heterogeneous in size, the Nigerian population, diverse ethnicity, diverse cultural groups, and whatever. So,
democracy will make more meaning.
If democracy can make more meaning with that, democracy is about prejudice, managing prejudice, trying to galvanize and reconcile diverse interests for aggregation. You can see that even from 1999 to now, you can see a display of some of these democratic factors. Each election threatens the unity of the country, but at the end of the day, we are back discussing. The other day, the candidate of the Labour Party was speaking very positive about the APC government. Because at the end of the day, there was an extensive battle on the field and even up to the litigations in the court. But at the end of the day, it was no reason to put Nigeria asunder. They came back together. Even if they are not together physically, they are making Nigeria work. They are into legitimate socio-political activities and economic activities, waiting for the appropriate time to go back to the battlefield again. So I think that kind of spirit is good. Democracy is actually evolving, is working. And I can also measure up with some great improvements in the electoral system. The electoral system has always been the bottleneck for a triumphant democratic rule. Even the First Republic, the reasons for its failure were attributed to a failed electoral system that produced results that were protested, and the military benefited from that because they justified their coming in because of the failure of that electoral system. In 1983, some of the reasons the Buhari intervention alluded was that the politicians were not ready to also manage what they have, manage their victory or do a credible election. So now that with the experimentations of devices such as the one in 215, the card reader improvement, we will get there. Some of these things are still being experimented. Experimentation leads to getting results. There must be breakthroughs, even if you don't get exactly what you want. So I believe that Nigeria is managing and gradually shielding off the toga of a post-military democracy. Like I said, the military conceived this democracy. They gave us the culture of democracy we are practicing. The militarized culture of democracy, the democracy of impunity, the democracy of lawlessness. So we'll get to shade off all this. And then we begin to do constitutional amendments. The critical aspect that we're advancing to, that calls for quick action, is the issue of judicial and electoral reforms in the national polity. There should be constitutional amendments within this regard. The judicial system of the country is not very appropriate. It is not very responsive to the demands for justice. So they should do certain amendments that will suit the purpose. But I know that will be very gradual. The electoral system, like I said, reforms are taking place. We must get there. Because Rome was not built in
We have ever had a conversation on a speedy dispensation of justice. What hinders it here on the platform? And we got to learn that most of the times the problem is from the executive in terms of dispensation of the funds needed for full implementation of such laws. The laws are there, but then the vehicle to drive home the law is what is lacking, and mostly accusation hands are being pointed at the executive arm of government.
No, that is true.
In terms of
but
funds.
It is even an institutional defect. It is because Nigerians are lawless people and we don't comply to ethics. It's a very cardinal thing. If you go everywhere, like I said before, when even people come into government positions, executive recklessness, executive excesses, instead of doing what is appropriated, they do what is in tune with their personal idiosyncrasy. I have mentioned that several times. The executive are supposed to not tamper with the funds that are allocated to the judiciary. In fact, if there is one arm of government that deserves autonomy, as is automatically even spelled in the constitution, it's a constitutional matter, it's the judiciary. So all that you are alluding to is just manipulation. The executive finds it very, very appropriate. Like, if you go now, even the battle is between the executive and the legislature over their autonomy. These are issues that are conceptualized originally in the constitution. But all you have is the institutional bottlenecks created by leaders. Because the monies that are allocated to the Judicial Service Commission are supposed to come from the consolidated revenue of the Federation. Am I right? So we will get there. Yeah. When we begin to address some of these issues, some of them, like somebody was saying, the House of Reps members are demanding for cutting down government costs by rotational presidency. I said that is not the excuse. If you want to cut down the cost of government, they should first sacrifice where they are. The bicameral legislature is the most useless expenditure in this country. When you have almost 500 people sitting in one place, duplicating functions, doing the same job, any humongous amount of allowances and salaries, you know, the same revenue under the same appropriation, the House of Reps and the House of Senate, or the Senate, they appropriate the same revenue, they take from the same revenue, they dispense from the same revenue. So they are doing the same job. It's duplication. So when you say cutting down government costs, let the cutting down emanate from there. Let it start from there. No country develops without the sacrifice of leaders. If not, the National Assembly package will just be a casual way of providing jobs for boys. The politicians just feel that when you finish governor, you go to Senate. When you finish House of Reps, you go to governor, and the cycle recycles itself. They will be doing that at the period of the emerging generations.
All right. You just spoke about emerging generations. For 25 years, how has Nigerian democracy carried the youth along? How have they fared? Because you'll be having youth restiveness here and there. In fact, the one that nearly toppled this country was the NSAS thing, but then I think God waded in and we're having peace today. How has democracy treated the youth in this country for 25 years?
In fact, let me be very honest with you. That is the major area that democracy has failed. Democracy has destroyed the major fabric of the Nigerian strength, which is the youth. Go and check the feeding system. How many graduates are we turning out every year? Does government have data for that? And if they do, what is the level of infrastructural expansion to cater for this people? Where are the jobs? Government should be rolling out industrial policies to expand the scope of employment. Yes, this country should be talking in the 21st century. We should be going industrial. There should be an industrial revolution. The country should go manufacturing so that jobs will be created. But if you go, all we have succeeded to do between 1999 to now is to create cosmetic jobs for youths. And that has stalled the good process of our youth, dynamic youth, graduating into responsible citizens and adults. Between 1999 to now, you can hardly find a steady recruitment process into the mainstream of the civil service, where people are expected to graduate from stage to stage and get maturity on the job. All the politicians display are cosmetic jobs like personal assistant, which are stamina. The tenure is not even guaranteed. And they bring, in fact, right now in the era of social media, it has been worsened. They have given employment to social media users to compound their mental laziness. They stay on the phone device for 24 hours, earning some little amount of money. Why don't you give these boys employments from grade level 7 and 8 so that they will graduate in the system? We will also through those means. I went into politics very early as an illustration. And when I found out that politics was a first start, I was even a state secretary at less than 30, state secretary of a party, a major party. But I went back to the service because I needed, today because I'm disinformed, explain the reason why I went back to school and trained myself. And I had to start as an admin officer to graduate to where I am today. I believe that is the most appropriate way of raising youth if we are to build value in our system. So the political system since the return of democracy has destroyed so many youth. They've not made any feasible plan to accommodate the youth. I'm very excited that Fadalia has started, the governor of Benue State has started a youth establishment, which I pioneered it under the Suswan government. We did an advocacy and I was appointed to coordinate the takeoff of that ministry until when some local politics came in and aborted the program. I'm so excited. We can make inputs that government should be worried that so much youth are being graduated. You cannot remain a youth, but youthfulness is a stage that is actualized in every person's life, be it a man or a woman. You must pass through that stage. So we must recast our minds. Why? During our youthfulness, how was growing up like? What were the opportunities that were available to us that made us to be where we are today? These are some of the questions our leaders should be asking. Than engaging youth in very idiotic jobs, keeping them on the sound, very small pay, to be hurling insults on the elders, using them against, in fact, using them for destructive errands, so to speak. That's what most of the politicians do. So we've not tried to develop the psyche of the Nigerian youth. I'm so happy that some of you are gainfully employed and you are giving your services to your motherland. It is the beginning of wisdom. By the time you leave here, one day you will sit somewhere and be talking the way I'm talking. Because you must have understand the basis for why you came onto this earth. And the service you rendered will not be in vain. Because you'll be learning, you have already learned today about the labor of our heroes past, which was the emphasis that you were talking about. What we're discussing here is the labor of our heroes past. If they didn't do what they did, perhaps there would be no Nigeria. They made sacrifice. So our current leaders, they should have a rethink about the way they have mismanaged the youthful resources of this country. I'm not comfortable with the trend of youth empowerment, which they call is an incentive. It's not. Let them recruit massively our younger people who have no value, who have more value to add than the bogus political appointees they are celebrating every day. If you send administrative officers into a federal civil service, 50 in number, out of them at least, eventually you will have about 20 directors in a couple of 10 to 15 years. Am I making any sense? Within that scope, you can even have federal permanent secretaries. There's a dearth of resource persons in the civil service because we are disconnected with the idea of involving youths and graduates in destructive errands, running nocturnal errands for politicians and then graduating into talks, brandishing themselves sometimes as people who can do mayhem so that they will be paid. So this is one of the cardinal failures of our democratic experiments.
Okay, Dr. Benue, please talk to us about dividends of democracy, especially here in Benue State. I know we've been speaking holistically about democracy, but let's trickle it down to Benue State now, in particular.
Dividends of democracy, yes, they will always be there. It's a secret thing. It will never go around to everybody because some of the things people call dividends of democracy are their little stipends that are given to them. That is another different class. So the issue of dividends of democracy should be viewed in different perspectives. In terms of development, we have fared very well, but minimally, because the development trajectory in this country and in this state particularly has been that of disconnectivity, abandoning what a former government did and starting afresh, and sometimes getting consumed by re-election challenges and things like that. So it is always a build, destroy and rebuild process. I can say that if there was a proper channeling of the policies that AKU had in 1979, if they were consolidated, because AKU was the first Nigerian governor that visualized economic diversification in the agri sector. Most of his policies and agricultural projects, and in fact most of his projects were agrarian driven. They were agriculturally based. You can cite Tarakumis, Beregbo, Fish Farm, even the BBL had some background mineral resources from the agri sector. So you see, AKU did a lot. His successors kept on drumming about all that he did without keying into consolidating his mainstream blueprint, which was agricultural diversification. Especially now that contemporary Nigeria is focusing more on economic diversification in agriculture. But Benue has not harnessed much of that in anticipation of the vision AKU had. So from 1999 to now, there has been some level of developmental projects here and there, but the major challenge is still reoccurring. The projects the AKU government started were not continued and sustained by his successor, Governor Susan. Governor Oton came he started doing some level of ambitious projects. Some of them didn't see the light of the day, but like the cargo airport can be revisited because Benue requires a cargo airport. Benue, in fact, I'm not comfortable that Nasarawa State is taking the place of Benue gradually because they have had a cargo airport ahead of Benue, and we started before them. And that's some huge infrastructure in agriculture. It has given them the preponderance for even exports. So we have to revisit the issue of Odom's initiative in the area of cargo airport. And then there were some few investments, foreign investors that came here were attracted by the last government. They should be encouraged. The biotech factory on Boku Road, they are doing very well in the economy. They are contributing to the domestic economy in terms of even revenues, in terms of employment. So these are not things that are very personal, but I think it has to do with an enabling law and enabling environment to have all of that. So when a government is in place and such an establishment comes, you must acknowledge it. I believe that Father Alia will even do better. From the way he has started with very strict measures for sanitization. And sanitization means injecting transparency and accountability in the system. And because we are used to the usual system that we all know, there are bound to be resistance. But I think people will get used to his own style. He's not only being firm and strict, he's also delivering. Like you can see massive projections going on across the 3 senatorial districts. The roads constructions, the township roads, the urban roads, and some of the major traffic carriages that he's building in major towns like Otukpo, Boko, and Makodi. You know, they are changing the narrative, they are changing the perception that yes, people can still pay salaries and do projects. So I think it's a paradigm shift. Alia may not be giving out handouts like his predecessors used to do to get cheap popularity, but he's doing massive infrastructural projects, which is a very cardinal aspect of the democracy dividends. He's working for the entire people, the downtrodden, the masses of the people, and I think some of his policies are populist. That's why you see resistance from the privileged classes. And he has gone down to patronize, even recovered the dead pensioners and whatever you call it. They are giving this testimony, not that somebody is in the studio trying to impress anybody. The testimonies are bound. So, from that perspective of cultivating a genuine sense of patronage, a sustainable arm of developing domestic economy is in the infrastructural wave. So dividends of democracy are now being channeled towards that angle against the regular monetization of stipends that were and handouts that were given to sharing groups. I think he has refocused governance, and mind you, when this kind of radical changes occur, there are bound to be resistance. Forget about the interpersonal animosities everybody is talking about. It is the change. People are reacting to the change.
All right. Maybe you talk a little about, we're wrapping up now, about maybe key reforms that we should adopt to strengthen our democracy. Because you started earlier, you said our democracy is still nascent.
Yes, it's nascent. Yeah. And looking at the history of struggles and the civilization of more fundamental democracies around the world, even the presidential system that we copied from the America, they have decades of years of experimentation before they got it right. So I think Nigeria is just evolving. We are taking the teaching part of the evolution. Having come this far, 2 decades, yes, so far so good. We believe that the military are finally returned to the barracks. Let me speculate, because when they handed over power in 1999, they say it marks the end of military rule in Nigeria. We believe they will keep their words, because there are insurrections in some of the developing African countries, but I pray that shouldn't be our case here, because it will be a setback for the hand of the clock. So to strengthen democracy, we need some strong judicial and electoral reforms, like I rightly said before. Most importantly, we must get the local government system working, not just in terms of granting it autonomy, but making it work through a standard electoral exercise that will produce leaders that are acceptable to them. The grassroots must be allowed to determine who governs, who chairs their local governments. That's the restoration of sovereignty that we spoke about. Recent experiments were very, very tarnishing, where elections into local councils almost became selection process and appointments. I believe that kind of attitude should be dissuaded. The path that we are on to now, the autonomy we are asking for is that let there be a transparent electoral system that we elect local government chairman or elect leadership at the local government level. The local government level is a third tier of government with all the corresponding institutions of the legislature and the judiciary. So it should be allowed and guaranteed express without limitations capacity to also operate. These are some of the key issues that will come into the reforms. If Nigeria is to reform, in the judicial system, we should design and bring a framework of judicial system that will quickly respond to adjudication. Because the justice system in the country is weighed down by a lot of cumulative excuses. Maybe one case that would have been adjudicated within 6 months, it takes 6 years. Sometimes the applicants or the respondents sometimes die in the process, and sometimes they flee. So some of the issues, like the issue of corruption, which is endemic, it has pervaded all sectors of the country, even including in the judiciary. Must take a second look. How people who steal the public wealth, how are they treated? Are they still treated like very honorable people? That is not supposed to be. Stealing public money is as bad as stealing and robbing somebody. So they should bring a system that will address all this. What is plea bargain? Plea bargain is a way of encouraging criminality. In the financial sector, if you steal 1 trillion, you return 500 million naira, then you have done plea bargain. What happens to the other 500 million that is supposed to even augment a lot of turnover? So we are jokers in this country. When we treat people, executive criminals, we call them that they should come and do plea bargain. Plea bargain is a word that encourages criminality. The man who does plea bargain today has encouraged the next person to steal more so that he can still return the money.
He does half and keep half for himself. Well, Dr. Bem, I wish time permits us to go on and on, but this is where I have to draw the curtains to this segment of the program. Thank you so much. We'll be having a conversation on 25 years of uninterrupted democracy here in Nigeria, and Dr. Bem Ugo, who happens to be a social justice advocate, has been doing justice to this conversation. We'll go for a break now. When we return, we'll turn our attention to the papers and find out stories that are making the news. Please stay with us.
Benue Fashion Show Season 3 is here.
It's that time of the year for fashion designers, entrepreneurs, and fashion enthusiasts to shine.
This year, sale of forms for the competition begins from 15th April to 30th June 2024.
Pick a form at Benue Television, located at Special Duties Wing, Government House, Makudi. Form costs 5,000 naira only.
Stage 1 screening begins on the 6th of July 2024. Great prizes await you.
The first prize, 1 million naira. Second prize, 500,000 naira. And third prize, 300,000 naira. All
prizes are inclusive of cash and fashion tools. Also, consolation prizes and gift items.
For sponsorship, partnership and inquiries, please call Benue TV Marketing on 0906 188 9838 or 0703 794 5569. Benue Fashion Show, embracing fusion fashion.
Welcome back from that break. We're now turning our attention to the dailies to find out stories that are making the news. And our first choice of paper is a Real News Line. There are a lot of stories here on this paper. The lead story here says Governor Alia swears in local government caretaker chairman. Okay, and just above the masthead, Senator Zam's bill to control cattle rearing passes second reading at the Senate. I beg your pardon. Governor Alia from Ape to Mbagu, early journey of a star priest. And then this one says another strike looms as federal government Labour disagree over minimum wage. If we flip over the paper, there are a couple of stories here, but we have majorly more goodwill messages in respect to Democracy Day. So this is the paper, please. There are a lot of stories, particularly concerning Benue State. For those who need to be informed, who needs to be abreast of what is really happening here in Benue State, this is a good place to start. Grab Real News Line to find out details of all the stories. But Stephen, about this issue of the bill to control cattle rearing passing second reading at the Senate is actually a plausible one. You know, that way
It's
it
a
becomes
plus for the House.
yes.
Yeah.
To think that particularly because Benue pioneered this, you know, Benue saw the vision from onset to see the need for this bill whether it's to prohibit open grazing in Nigeria. And here we are now passing second reading, and hopefully when it becomes a law, it won't just be a Benue problem, but a national problem, and hopefully a more serious, lasting solution will be looked towards that regard. But so far so good. Democracy Day, 25 years, and it's been beautiful so far, and I enjoyed the conversation we had with our guests. You'll continue.
Yes. 25 years of uninterrupted democracy.
Yeah.
It's worth celebrating.
Yes.
At least for the rest of the week.
I mean, if no one else is celebrating, Benue is definitely celebrating, because Benue have all the reasons to celebrate. We are actually seeing the dividends of democracy playing out here in Benue State. This is how we end the edition of Daybreak Benue this morning. My name is Mercy Upa.
My name is Stephen Abba. Have a lovely day.